Hello, everyone, and welcome to the DeKalb Democrats webinar on education. Specifically, we are going to talk about educating our younger children, our elementary, middle, and high school kids. I'm so excited that you're here today. We have a great panel to discuss this. And that panel includes who's joining us right now, Representative Karen Lupton. We also have Representative David Wilkerson, and we have Senator Rashawn Kemp. So in just a moment, hi, we'll talk with all of them. My name is Nicole Horn. I am a longtime DeKalb Democrat, someone who has run for office before, and as a mom of two kids, been very involved in the fight for our school dollars. So I am going to start off our session by sharing my screen and giving everybody some background information on how the budget is created and passed. So I'm going to hit share. Do, do, do. And hold on one second, please, so that I can see my notes. All right, here we go, everyone. So Karen, can you shake your head if you see education in Georgia? Great. All right. Well, the school budget, y'all. You may have heard in the past, people refer to the QBE formula. That is the Quality Basic Education Act formula that was funded by the General Assembly. And as I knew of the QBE formula, but I did not know it was actually Roy Barnes who introduced this bill that created the funding formula. It's a great formula insofar as it sets the school budget as a priority and a threshold that we need to meet. There are some problems with it. So we're going to talk about those problems in a little bit. And Representative Lupton and Wilkerson are going to talk about how they hope to fix those problems. So in 2026, our budget was $13.7 billion or 36% of the budget. So not a small amount. It funds 1.7 million students and provides resources to 2,300 public schools. And that also includes public charter schools. So here's here's a very high level of the process, all right? So the General Assembly determines the base amount per student, and they give weights to the students. So primary school students are elementary school kids. They get the most weight. Middle school gets the middle, high school gets the lowest weight. And that is for direct instructional costs. And when we talk about direct instructional costs, what we're talking about are paying our teachers, okay? So it's that's kind of the first bucket we need to think about. The next bucket is filled with indirect costs. And these are things that affect the students but aren't classroom teachers. So think about libraries, think about school maintenance and salaries for principals. The funds for these positions are tied to the number of schools within the system and the number of full-time employees in those schools. All right. Then we're going to deduct the local fair share. So when this bill was put together, our legislators said, well, we still want our our districts, our communities, our towns and counties to kick in a little bit. So they said each school district pays 5 mills, and 5 mills is $5 of $1,000 property tax. And all of that is deducted from the QBE formula, and it's known as the local effort. So that's how it got its name, the local fair share. So before the state sends down all the dollars they need, it deducts the local fair share. And then after the calculation of indirect and direct educational costs and the subtraction of the local fair share, the state provides a fourth bucket, and these are categorical grants. So these are grants for services that might pay for school nurses or sparsity, which helps smaller districts and more rural areas pay for fixed overhead costs. Nope. School bus transportation is also funded through a categorical grant. Although, and we're going to talk about this, y'all, the state has historically paid lower, significantly lower in more recent years than in past years. And we're going to get to that as a problem. All right. Now, for the last several years, which has driven me absolutely bananas, the Georgia legislature has tapped itself on its back and said, good for us, we fully funded QBE. Here's what they're not talking about. Here's what Democrats are talking about, but Republicans aren't talking about. From 2003 to 2018, Georgia fell under austerity cuts when QBE was not fully funded. And these cuts equaled, this blows my mind, about $1 billion per year of our education budget. So we're talking about a cumulative lack of funding that's around $10 billion. It is not a small amount. So we have funded what we're supposed to fund every year, but we have not made up for the years and years and years of austerity cuts. And that's why, I mean, I know I've gone to some DeKalb County schools and I'm like, oh, this school, it's kind of run down. And y'all, we've talked about, gosh, schools were in the papers last year talking about how bad they were. It's because of these austerity cuts. Okay, so that's a little more context. All right, more context. The state has also covered a shrinking amount of busing costs. So there are going to be some youngins on this call who don't remember when gas was like 60 cents a gallon. Senator Kemp, you might not remember this because you're also I turned 50 next week, so I remember this. So like it looks like we were doing great covering busing costs, but as gas has gone up, the state has not kept pace with that, and that is eating into these local budgets. The other thing that's eating into local budgets, guys, are vouchers. So this is another thing that's interesting to me that and y'all, I have fought as a parent who cares about the school system. I've actively fought against vouchers in Georgia. I didn't realize we have 3 vouchers, not 1, not 2. We have 3 vouchers because I was aware of the Georgia Promise Scholarship Act, which they poured more money into this time. So the Georgia Promise Scholarship, in the first 3 weeks, the Georgia Student Finance Commission received over 7,400 applications that will potentially fund over 21,000 vouchers to eligible students. In order to be eligible, you have to be in the bottom performing 25% of schools. This year, the Georgia General Assembly budgeted $141 million in public funding for the state's latest voucher program, and it will divert about 1% of QBE funding. So the Georgia Special Needs Program, that average voucher is just under 7,000. In order to qualify, your student needs to be receiving an IEP or a 504 plan. This was enacted in 2007. And I just want to say it is the job of our schools to educate everyone with IEPs and 504s. So, we should just fund schools better, but that's Nicole's. And then the last one is the Qualified Education Expense Tax Credit. This is actually just a way for wealthy people to create tax deductions. The average voucher is about $4,600. Individuals can receive 100% tax credit for donations to a scholarship organization for $2,500 or $5,000 for married couple. It sounds good, but if it's used by more than so this is what you need to keep in mind, guys. If it's used by more than 33% of students who are already going to private school, we lose that money. It actually harms the state's bottom line. So again, more ways that vouchers are our wonderful Republican colleagues are trying to fund private industry. Okay. All right. So the way vouchers defund public schools, there's two main ways. First, they use public education funds for private institutions. Obvious. But second, they decrease public school enrollment. And you might think, well, Nicole, if there are less students to educate, why does that matter? Here's the problem, guys. Schools have fixed costs. And when you have lower enrollment in schools, there's fewer people to cover the fixed cost of your principal, your counselor, your busing. So vouchers, like the Georgia Public Scholarship, make it more difficult for schools to handle those fixed costs. In 2008 to 2021, a total of $1.3 billion was diverted by Georgia's vouchers program. That was happening, guys, even while QBE wasn't fully funded. So we can't take away these vouchers, even as we take away money from our public schools. All right, let's keep going. Okay. There are also tax caps that we're facing now. So local property taxes account for about 37% of public school funding in fiscal year 2022. HB 581 caps the annual assessment increase for property taxes at the rate of inflation. And so schools could choose to opt out. And not surprisingly, approximately 120 school systems have done this, including DeKalb County. Ooh, I'm sorry, guys. School districts. So what's happening now, what we're going to see probably is we'll see Republicans make it more difficult to opt out because they want to talk about keeping taxes low while we are trying to talk about actually funding schools. So all right, now I'd like to share with you, and I will go back in and drop this in the chat. The Georgia Budget and Policy Institute did some great work that highlighted 3 recommendations for changes to QBE. Keep in mind, QBE was created in 1985. There are some existing problems to it. I'm going to share 3 of them, and then we're going to turn it over to our panel discussion. Okay, so the first thing they recommended, a poverty weight. So Georgia is only one of 6 states that doesn't provide additional funding to educate students living in poverty. Governor Deal's 2015 Education Reform Commission actually recommended adding a weight to the way the state funds education. But that just did not get done. So what Republicans say is, well, they've got Title I funding. We don't need a poverty weight. But here's the problem. Yes, schools do have federal Title I money, which is great. But policymakers in general recognize that those dollars are insufficient and they're also limited by mandates and by bureaucracy, where a weight gives our schools the opportunity to make the decisions to best meet the needs of the kids that they are teaching. So schools in rural Georgia, for example, might need the funds to transport students to dual enrollment programs. Those in suburban districts could use it to pay for universal free meals, and urban districts could set up wraparound services. So a poverty weight. The second one is to fund transportation, and I was just talking about this. I love this chart. It shows how the rising costs that districts have had to pay to meet the needs of transportation costs, and that the flat line that the state is paying. So state lawmakers have made, and they have made significant investments into pupil transportation the last 2 years. They did put in 221 million additional dollars into the amended fiscal year, but these have come as amendments to the previous year's budget to finance bus replacement. It's not a formula that will, it's not something that will change the formula and bake in increases that are needed. And the last one is increase counselors. And I love this. So the American School Counselors Association recommends a school counselor ratio of 1 to 250 students. And when I read that Georgia's baseline is 1 to 450 students, y'all, I'm just blown away. So in practice, the most recent data available shows that Georgia schools employ a counselor for it ends up being about 422 students. And this is putting us behind neighbors like Alabama that has one for every 380. South Carolina has one for every 338. Those are still not good numbers, but God, y'all, when Alabama's doing better than us, we have a problem. So at such a high ratio, schools don't have the professionals necessary to address students' socio and emotional needs. And lots of studies have highlighted the positive effects of hiring additional school counselors. You've got lower absentee rates, fewer suspension, higher graduation rates. And y'all, higher graduation rates leads to lower criminal records, which also saves the state money. So it's a really great upfront investment. Okay, so I am done yelling about our fantastic school system. Today's discussion is going to include school funding, the impact of dismantling the Department of Education. I want to talk about ICE in our schools. I want to talk a little bit about pre-K funding. And I also want the opportunity to answer your questions. So I appreciate that. And now we've got our wonderful state legislators here. I'm going to make introductions. Um, Representative Wilkerson, are you going to come on camera? Yes, thank you, sir. You're my first introduction because you're the longest standing of this group, so you get to go first. Um, Y'all, Representative David Wilkerson was first elected to the Georgia House of Representatives in 2010. He's representing the 38th district. That includes Austell, Mableton, and Powder Springs in Cobb County. Since then, he's been a strong advocate for his community, serving on committees like education, juvenile justice, retirement, budget, and fiscal affairs, and oversight. Representative Wilkerson has held significant leadership roles, including treasurer for the Democratic Caucus and Democratic Whip. In 2018, he made history as the first African American to be elected chair of the Cobb County Legislative Delegation. He is a champion for middle class and is actively involved in the Working Families Caucus and has advocated for fully funding K through 12 education and making college more affordable. He has successfully fought against cuts to advanced placement. Thank you, thank you, thank you. My kids really appreciate that. That would have affected a lot of families in need. So Representative Wilkerson is like me. He is a damn Yankee. He came here and stayed. He was born in Fort Dix, New Jersey, and is the son of a Sergeant First Class Richard and Helen Wilkerson. Growing up attending public schools, Representative Wilkerson graduated summa cum laude from North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University with a degree in accounting and is now working in one of the big fours, Deloitte and Touche. So we also have joining us Representative Karen Lupton. Representative Lupton is the state representative for House District 83, which includes Chamblee and Brookhaven. She has been successful in advocating for survivors of domestic abuse and sexual assault, as well as supporting increased funding for specialized nurses around the state. She has added her signature to legislation to restore women's reproductive rights. We're still working on that. Increase tenant protections. We're still working on that. Protect the Okefenokee Swamp and prevent gun violence. Still working on it. But what I always love talking, as far left as I am, when I talk to Representative Lupton, she says, I lean left, but I also see the value in bipartisan cooperation. She lives in DeKalb County in Chamblee, and she previously served as the Chamblee City on the Chamblee City Council as the parent of public school educated children. She has also served the president of Chamblee's Middle School Education Foundation and currently sits on the Dresden Elementary School Education Foundation. Her background is rooted in the arts, specifically music. And before serving at the State House, Representative Lupton was the program coordinator for Songs for Seniors, a therapeutic music program for elders with dementia. She is also, y'all, a singer, like a professional singer. So we need to figure out a way to get her to a DeKalb County party and have her sing, which would be amazing. And finally, we have Senator Rashawn Kemp. Senator Kemp proudly represents the 38th District of Georgia, which is a Fulton County seat that includes portions of Atlanta, Sandy Springs, the city of South Fulton, Fairburn, East Point, Union City, Palmetto, and Chattahoochee Hills. In his very first legislative session, Senator Kemp delivered results by passing his first bill, Senate Bill 93, which addresses Georgia's literacy crisis. I love this so much by ensuring all Georgia teachers are properly trained in evidence-based reading instruction. That's awesome. Senator Kemp also serves as senior director at a national nonprofit organization dedicated to amplifying the voices of Black and Brown public charter school teachers. He previously led a national nonprofit as its first executive director, and his distinguished professional career includes leadership at a state education department, service as a government affairs professional, and roles as a high school teacher and principal, becoming a school leader at just 27. As a resident of Atlanta for more than a decade, Senator Kemp is happily married to Ken Kemp, I'm sorry, mouth tongue twisted, a middle school counselor and administrator in East Point. And together they are the proud parents of Brooklyn. Is Brooklyn still 3? She's got to be 4 by now. Um,
Oh, you couldn't.
and
I was saying 4. Yep, she's 4.
and Jaden, who I assume is also 22 now. And has Jaden graduated from Tennessee State University? I pulled this bio and it might be a
Well,
touch.
that's fine. Almost. He finishes in.
Almost. He's
Yeah.
he's closing in on it. The Kemp family attends Impact United Methodist Church and loves spending time with loved ones in Dublin, Georgia, and Columbus, Ohio. So, welcome, welcome, welcome. I am so thankful to have all of you here for to answer lots of questions. Before I dive into the questions, I'm curious, is there anything that I said that you're like, Nicole, that's crazy, wrong, or I have something to add?
I just want to add a bit of good news to one of the things you highlighted about Georgia being one of only 6 states that does not give a poverty rate. Thanks to the House, we are slowly changing that. There was a grant that was put into the budget this year. Unfortunately, when it came to the Senate, it was cut drastically, but still, I think about 15 million or so was still left in there to allow for a poverty weighted grant to go to districts. So that was a bit of good news that did come from the budget this year.
Oh, that is, yeah, that is really, really fantastic. Thank you for sharing that update. And
Now, you know
actually,
you're going to
some
get in trouble for giving a shout out to the House. I mean, we do a lot of the good work, and so we thank you for that because it's good to have some good allies on the Senate side. So, and we're looking forward to more people like you.
We have to count on the House to save us from a lot of craziness. So
I know
I'm
the
all the shine.
crazy comes
Yep.
from the Senate. Okay, guys. Well, Representative Wilkerson, Representative Lupton, anything you guys want to add, change, address?
Oh, excellent job.
Okay, thank you. Well, Senator Kemp, I'm actually going to start with you on this because we just gave an overview of the state funding, but you held a press conference when Trump was threatening to withhold federal funding. Can you talk about how that threat could have impacted our schools and will impact our school? Because it's not as simple as everything's okay now.
Yeah, it definitely impacted schools and that it caused a lot of confusion and disruption. And even though the funds were ultimately released, and that was as a result of a lot of advocacy across the country, bipartisan advocacy, I will point out. Even Republicans, Senate Republicans, sent a letter to the White House, and I think that really helped. Even our state school superintendent spoke out. And unfortunately, our governor did not, which I called for, but he did not. But ultimately, all of our voices, I think, lended into them releasing the funds. But one thing that's really important to point out is that even though the funds were released for this year because they were already congressionally appropriated funds, the budget that Trump put out for the next year actually gets rid of all of these programs. So that is like after school, summer school programming, support for migrant children and children who are, children of people who are incarcerated. So all of those funds still there's a proposal from the White House to get rid of all of those dollars. The good news is the Senate put that money back in. So the hope is that the Senate budget, even though it's not great, will prevail over what the Trump administration has put forward for their upcoming budget.
Okay, so there is hope, but we're going to have to lean on our. I know that our current senators are absolutely advocating for that, but
Absolutely. Yes.
okay,
Yeah.
thank you. So Representative Wilkerson, uh, there has been talk of updating QBE for years. Like
Yep.
this is nothing new. Uh, what's holding us back?
Money. I remember when the conversation was happening on her deal, and the challenge was that they did the formula, they had the meetings, they listened to the experts, and they realized it would take additional funding. And so what they decided instead was give flexibility, meaning you get to decide between a nurse or a counselor. You get to decide between what you think is the most important. I mean, do you want kids to eat, or do you want them to, have medical, benefits in school or nurse? And
Yeah,
so, yeah, so the Republicans like to say that they're fully funding education, but think back to 1985, 86. We have computers now. We have a whole different environment. We have challenges dealing with shootings. We have school safety issues. And, flexibility is the word of the day. And what that basically means is that we can increase your class size. We can
yeah,
not do the certain
yeah,
things that we know are important. And so they've scared teachers to speak up. They've scared schools to say what they actually need. They've kept people out of the schools that could possibly help. And so really the whole thing that's holding us back is only money. They will acknowledge that, they can update anything else. They can update the tax code, but it takes a certain amount of money to fund schools, and they don't want to commit to it. Other states have already seen the impact of not funding schools and going to vouchers. You're seeing schools close. You're seeing
yeah,
Republicans saying, what do we do? How do we close a school? So the school that your child graduates from today may not be in existence a few years from now based on how vouchers typically work. There is no income cap on vouchers because it has not reached its cap yet. So you could be as wealthy as you want, as wealthy as you are, and you may not need it, but no one's going to turn down 6,000 plus in funds. So really, it's pretty as simple as they don't want to fund it. That's the
yeah.
bottom line.
Yeah, I hate that it's that simple, but it kind of is that simple. But you and Representative Lupton and Representative Marvin Lynn all have a proposal out to try and make some changes. And Representative Lupton, I'd love for you to explain it, not to take the sunshine away from you, Representative Wilkerson, but
Definitely
I'm
Lupton,
taking turns.
Representative Lupton. Yes, no, she understands this completely. So yeah.
So, oh, you're on mute.
Oh my gosh. Isn't that the standard Zoom mistake? Okay. Hi, everyone. Yes, we have HB 796, and all it does is You mentioned that under Governor Deal, there was, there was a big exploratory committee for school reform that was formed. This is 10 years ago now. This was in 2015. Had a lot of different recommendations come out of that. And one was, hey, here's a way that we can update QBE. The Republican governor of the time said he tasked part of this commission with finding a way to update our outdated QBE formula. They came up with recommendations. They have been sitting on a shelf for 10 years.
Yeah.
So we just asked ourselves, okay, what happens if we plug in this formula? And what comes out? We, as legislators, when we're submitting a bill and it might have a cost to it, we can then ask for what's called a fiscal note and say, okay, how much is this actually going to cost if this law, it goes into effect? And yeah, it's money. It's 1.5, 1.2 or 1.5 billion to update just the QBE. That's not even adding a poverty weight. One thing that was what the legislature seems to want to do and is way happy to do piecemeal is, instead of messing with the assumptions that created the QBE in 1985, before we had the internet and cell phones and personal computers that kids carried around, all the day, all the time. Rather than mess with those assumptions, they will give things piecemeal. Even the poverty
Yeah.
rate is a separate line item that they can then withdraw if they care to. They can mess with the amount. They can withdraw if they care to. It's not baked into a QBE formula. They're perfectly happy to spend cash on metal detectors. The recent school safety bill that Republicans put forth after Appalachia, HB 268, I asked they will tell you that it spends millions on mental health for children.
It doesn't.
And I asked the guy who was carrying the bill in education, David Wilkerson and I are in the House Education Committee. And I asked, will this put a single more counselor or school psychiatrist or psychologist in a school on the ground? And no, it won't. It doesn't put a single person on the ground.
That it will help with mental health, just that the kids will feel safer. I mean, there's
They
something to that, but
Right. They part of the money that is put aside, and not the majority of it, but a lot of it is in grants that are reimbursable grants, meaning that the school has to have the money first, then the state will reimburse them for it. And they're saying, hey, if your school system is this big, the state will pay a reimbursable grant for a mental health coordinator in your district. And I ask, coordinating what? If we're short on these people anyway, I mean, it's not a terrible thing, but they're the ones who are constantly yelling about school admin and we don't need administration, cut it all down. They're perfectly willing to spend millions on a database to track kids, to supposedly make us safe, metal detectors, and piecemeal things rather than just get in there, dig out some of the assumptions of a 40-year-old formula and bring it up to date.
Yeah. I mean, just imagine if you asked your family to live on an allocation of expenses from 1985. That was 40 years ago. I mean, now how many people have an alarm system in their house? It'd be crazy. Now everybody has an alarm system in their house.
yeah.
I mean, just different costs happen now that did not happen back then. The percent that people are paying on rent, their mortgage is a lot different as far as how you allocate it. And what we're asking students and families to live off of is the same formula they used back in 1985. And to Representative Lupton's point, we need to take QBE off the shelf. It's been sitting on the shelf for 40 years. It's time to take it off the shelf, dust it off, and actually put the money behind what it takes to fully fund our schools.
So I'm going to ask the obvious question, and that is, can we get across the aisle support for this? And Senator Kemp, is this just going to die and languish in the Senate where evil things start and good things go to die? Sorry.
I
I'm
think,
not shy about my opinions.
no, you're absolutely right. I didn't live through this my first time. I absolutely understand your sentiments. I truly believe that this takes gubernatorial leadership. I mean, you saw Governor Deal do this.
Yeah.
Governor has not led on K-12 education. That has not been his thing. That's why we need to win the governor's mansion and have a strong candidate that is going to be willing to take the leap and adjust QBE. I mean, folks in Tennessee just did a new funding formula, and it seems to be going well. Georgia continues to lag behind, as you shared. Like even when you see South Carolina and Alabama, like funding
Yeah.
more reasonable level, school counselors. I mean, we are behind, and we should not be. And I just truly think it's going to take some gubernatorial leadership for us to truly do something with QBE.
Do y'all think that I do have other school questions, but the activist in me comes out. And in my head, when I call our Republican leaders about all the ridiculous baloney, I won't swear on Zoom, that got passed, people asked me, well, where do you live? And when I say Atlanta, DeKalb County, they ignore me. Like, what can we do as people who live in a very progressive community, but we are fighting for people? I mean, better schooling helps everybody. Is it possible for us to have a voice and to make an impact? I'd love to hear y'all's thoughts on that.
That's a great question. What I've been telling my constituents is that we already know that Burt Jones, fake elector, is running for governor. He wants votes wherever he can get them. And if you say, I've kept an eye on what you've done to our state, you will not get my support. You will not have my vote because statewide, every vote counts. You're not,
Yeah, yeah,
it's not as broken down by district. And I'm convinced that Brian Kemp will run in the future. And again, tell him, I will not forget what you have done to this state. And if and when you run for president, sir, you may not count on my vote.
yeah. No,
Uh,
I love that.
that's it's petty, but if a vote is what counts, then that's the way we can hold that over their heads at that level.
Okay, great.
Can't save everybody. And as Democrats, I tell people that, we are very good about trying to think about collective society as a whole. And really, I have 60,000 people I represent. My focus is going to be on making sure the 60,000 people are taken care of, but also making sure that we do things across the state. So when we talked about AP funding, when they first came back with the budget, they wanted to cut out AP funding except for STEM classes. So I went to the chairman. I was like, okay, great. Do you even have these classes? And he's like, you know what? We don't, because he was so focused on what the Republicans told him to do that they then they changed it to say either a STEM class if you're, anybody, or um, if you qualify for free and reduced lunch, you can get any class. And so you kind of
Yeah,
have to put it in their terms. The reality is that the metro area is not going to be, we have challenges. We have a lot of challenges, but we have the tax base to support this in some ways. And with the federal cuts that are coming, the people that are going to suffer are their folks. Can they suffer from the lack of, Title, One funds, or, it just, they're going to suffer more than we are in some cases. For example, if you look at the Promise Scholarship or the voucher bill, it benefits heavily the city areas. And so you have chairmen, you have committee members that voted for a bill that nobody in their district will qualify for. Actually, I take that back. they will qualify for. There's no private schools.
Yep.
So we have a chairman that has every school in his district, every student in his district qualifies. And he voted for the bill, but they don't have the private schools to go to. So he just sent a bunch of money to this other cities where they do have private schools where they can make money. So we thank him for that. Tell them thank you. We don't like the bill, but thank you for sending more money to our communities. And so that's what we have to kind of put it in their terms is that you can't save people from themselves. You look at the Republicans that do the best job of harming their own folks, and we try to step in and save them. Whereas if we take care of our people, they'll see how great we're treating our people, and it will work out. But they're passing policies right now that are dangerous, and that are going to hurt their own folks.
Well, we've got a question, and then I have other questions I want to ask. But Eric Gisler asked, "The stupid big billionaire bill, I love that, is cutting millions of federal dollars from education in the form of Title I funding and IDEA funding. Is that how you pronounce that, or do you pronounce it IDEA funding? I'm not sure."
IDEA.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you, Senator Kemp.
Yeah.
Uh, he is asking, but he's also hearing Republicans talking about eliminating the state income tax at the Georgia level. So we're losing federal money, we're losing state money. And he said, have any of you heard them say where the new revenue is going to come from to kind of plug those holes? Do they talk about that?
Once again, this is a crazy Senate thing. There's a study committee on eliminating state income tax that Burt Jones put together. I really want to know where this money is going to come from because we're going to pay for it somehow, right?
Yeah.
The state has too much responsibility just to get rid of the income tax. So we'll see what their recommendations are when they are done studying this insanity. But part of the concern I have with this horrible bill is that so much of it is implemented after the upcoming midterms. Like they were really smart and heinous in what they did, right? So people aren't going to
Yes.
feel these cuts until after this next election. Like a lot of it goes into effect in 2027. So that is
Yep.
a big concern that I have that like people aren't going, like the people like Representative Wilkerson said, like it's going to impact their folks, like the people that tend to vote for them even more because rural communities are going to suffer. Like less kids are going to be getting breakfast and lunch because of SNAP cuts, and
Yeah.
less kids or families are going to be able to have access to childcare and not going to be able to work. So therefore, workers are going to be impacted. And so that is the really heinous thing. And then in addition to that, there is a federal tax credit for vouchers that states will be able to opt into. That is going to take even more money away from our public schools. And that's like $1,700 that's going to be per a voucher, very similar to the tax credit scholarship that we already have. So all of this stuff goes into
Insane.
effect in 2027. So yeah, it's all a big concern. Yeah.
Well, I want to address what I think is one of the most heinous things that we are dealing with right now, and that is the threat of ICE coming into our schools, that driving absenteeism, just as we're seeing absenteeism just start to come down. You have the threat of ICE that's driving it up again and disrupting our schools. And so uh, I'm afraid I'm going to ask this question, and you guys are going to be like, well, if Democrats were in control, we could do something, but we can't. Um, do you think the General Assembly will try and address ICE in schools? And again, what recommendations do you have for those of us on the webinar?
I don't think they'll touch it. They're thrilled to death. But both the House and the Senate have study committees this summer. And Rayshawn, I don't know if you're on the Senate one, delving into
Absenteeism.
chronic absenteeism.
Yeah, I am. Yeah. Mhm.
And they're very curious about this as they are the fear-mongering ones creating absenteeism. So I hope that's being brought up, Rashawn. I don't know if what's happened in your first meeting.
Yeah, we just had our first meeting and it was kind of like getting information. I will make sure it's brought up. But one thing that is important for educators and folks to know is like law does not require schools to let ICE in without a warrant. So that's one important thing for folks to know. I mean, I know that nowadays like they don't care about law and due process and things, but it's still important for like folks that are educators to know that. um but yeah, we are studying chronic absenteeism, and one of the things that we are already seeing that is most important is school culture, like children feeling that they want to go to school, feeling safe, and families wanting their kids to go to school feeling supported. Like that's the number one driver to reduce chronic absenteeism. And with families fearing that they may be deported, I mean, that is going to be an issue. But I mean,
Yeah.
much like Representative Upton said, like, I can't imagine that we're going to do anything to stop ICE from doing any of the craziness that they're doing.
Fortunately,
Um,
DeKalb County does know the right the rights of their students and has a policy that basically nobody gets past the door. You don't see the kid, you don't get past the front door without a warrant. That's their
yeah,
standing
it's because we have a great new
policy.
superintendent. Um, well,
I
I
don't know
want
about Cobb, David.
Yeah, yeah. No questions on Cobb tonight.
to. I want to shift gears just a touch, y'all. For the last 2 years, Georgia has invested more in pre-K. Thank God. But there are still significant challenges. Uh, for example, assistant teachers still only make 22,000. Um, Pre-K still only serves 4-year-olds. There is still a wait list. I have talked about this. I mean, even though it's been almost 4 years now, when I was running for labor commissioner, I talked about the childcare deserts we have across the state and how since COVID, childcare costs have skyrocketed. So the introduction of pre-K for 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds helps address that and also helps close those poverty gaps that we see for children. So, do you see any further investments in pre-K? Is this going to be something I want to see Democrats lead with this? Y'all, I want to see y'all fight for this as well. I know you're spending a crap load of time fighting bad bills, but this should be bipartisan. So, talk to me about this.
I mean, this is one area where I do see that there could be some possibility. This year we did a tax credit for child care and like raising children. And Brian Strickland was the one that like led on that. And he and I did lawmakers together. And one of the things that gave me some encouragement was he said like this is a start. And I think that the reason why there's some opportunity here is because Republicans are now seeing that it impacts the job market. Like families are
Yeah,
literally
yeah,
saying, well, it's cheaper if one of us don't work. So
yes.
I think that there is some opportunity there. And, our fight on literacy, we're realizing that it's going to require kids to come into kindergarten better prepared. So I think like those things like may create an opportunity for us to find some bipartisanship. And hey, I am one of the lucky parents that got in. My daughter, as I shared, is 4, and she just started pre-K last week. So it
Yeah.
should not be that so many folks are on wait lists. And thank God. I mean, like there are lots of families that this like changes how much money you have in the bank. That is a
No, because paying for it is, yeah.
yeah.
Sorry. Me too, Senator Kemp, for both my kids. They both went to pre-K and Toomer. So it's great. Uh, I want to return to ICE for just a second, unless y'all have something else to add to that. That's really good. That gives me hope. I love hearing that people can be reasonable. Representative Lupton, Representative Wilkerson, anything you want to add? Because I have one more ICE question to come back to. Okay.
Go ahead.
Marie Bolser said that she's a teacher at Doraville United Elementary, and her staff was instructed not to interfere with ICE, and the consequence could be arrest for interfering with ICE. And the school has a 95% Hispanic population, and so she's asking, this is a great question. How do we get the correct information to principals?
I'm not sure what principals have been told by the superintendent. Because I've just been online and talking to people on the school board. So I'm not sure whether that's being said. I'm not sure whether that's a policy as like teachers let the front office, like if the front off, if these people have gotten past the front office, don't throw yourself in front of them. I don't
Yeah.
know if that's the policy that's like the policy that they have of not letting ICE in without a warrant. That's at a policy level that I'm not sure where the decisions have been made. And
But
I'm
that
not
It's
was
sure
really
how to.
it's really driven by the superintendent. I mean, because I don't think legally you can stop anything from happening. It's just been common decency that stopped them from going into churches and schools. But common decency, as we can tell right now, is kind of in short supply when you have ICE saying that we don't care if you're 75 and can't read, but you can join ICE because they got rid of the age limits of 40. And believe it or not, I saw something on social media and then I went to the Homeland Security website. If you have not been to the Homeland Security Facebook or Twitter and you want to be scared, go there because you would be extremely scared. You would think you were in the 1940, Germany because it is scary. So the reality is, yes, as a teacher, you have to follow the law and follow what your principal says. You don't want to get in trouble, but the thought of common decency is gone. Now, what the superintendent's going to have to weigh is when you have students stop showing up, that's going to hit the superintendent and the principal. So they can't have it both ways. Either they got to stand up and have courage or deal with on the backside when you have a low attendance rate, you hit that school voucher list, and then everybody leaves your school anyway. So it's really up to the leadership of that school and superintendent.
Marie, I just put uh Dr. Dr. Horton's letter to the public about ICE and what he's telling people into the comments. Because I feel like that's at least a good place to look and start and as in terms of a conversation with your principal. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, I think that's
Um,
really helpful and important for Marie to see that because even if I was still in the role of leading the school, I would direct my staff to get with me. Like, don't you physically try to stop if you're outside and things like that. Don't do that to yourself, but to report it
yeah.
to an administrator. So I think that's, very sound advice.
Um, okay, my last question, and then I will turn it over to our many attendees. AI, y'all, AI in our schools. How does the General Assembly want to recommend the management of AI? How are we incorporating AI? What are we doing with AI in our classrooms? Because this is now a brand new reality. And I don't know if it is something that it's appropriate to legislate. Um, I'm curious as to, is it appropriate to try and legislate? We don't have a General Assembly of school teachers who are experts on this. But I also believe that there are best practices that other states might have put forward. What are you hearing? What are you seeing? And what are you expecting?
So what you saw from Congress was they actually banned the initial bill of the thing they just passed would have forbidden any state from putting any regulations on AI. So really we probably need to look to higher education first, bridge that gap as higher education is some colleges have
Yeah.
incorporated it, realizing it's out there. Some have not. But really look for best practices. But it is something that is changing every day. Because even if you look at the bills that we're passing, we are pushing computer science where AI is going to do a lot of those jobs. And so we are significantly behind of where we're putting our investments because even looking at EVs, we're passing laws on EVs that we have no idea. So to ask us to understand AI is difficult because it's not cut taxes or deport illegals or do this. It's actually a complicated issue that they're not equipped to handle right now. So yeah, we do have to have that discussion. We have to understand that AI is here and how do we embrace it. But with the banning of cell phones in schools and different things, how do we use AI in schools, or will we?
Yeah.
So I think we're going to have to look at it, as a state, and I just don't know how equipped we are right now to do that, but it's definitely something that we need to take care of.
There is some use of AI. I mean, when you hear AI in schools, you think of like plagiarism and kids looking up all sorts of answers and things. There is some AI being used in like school safety to try to identify weapons and things like that. Because I don't know about anybody else, but my son just graduated high school in May. So the past 2 years, I guess, he's been walking through metal detectors to get into his high school,
Mm.
and they had to take everything out of their bags
Yeah.
because stuff with the machinery was going off with every little piece of metal. So everybody had to empty out their bags and carry everything in their hands into the office. Um, so there's some different applications of it, and I know Senator, this isn't specifically school centered, but Senator Sally Harrell is working on some AI stuff to try to keep younger kids safe because AI bots are engaging kids and very quickly taking them into adult territory.
Okay.
So she's got a really good eye on that. And Sally Harrell represents a lot of the area that I'm in DeKalb.
Yeah. Okay. I am going to stop and see if we have any questions from our audience. I appreciate you guys taking the time to come and join us today.
While we're waiting, I might plug the fact that myself, Marvin Lim, Representative Wilkerson, several other Representative Lydia Glaze, Representative Imani Barnes are all having a press conference tomorrow at the Capitol at noon on the South Steps inside to bring
To
up,
talk about your bill.
to bring up these challenges and to come forth with an attitude of, well, if the feds are going to be fickle, now is a great time for Georgia to double down on its commitment for its children and its future. We're calling it the Fund the Future press conference.
One question we've got is, I understand from Eric Gisler, thank you, Eric. I understand the Education Lottery Reserve is significantly overfunded. Why can't some of that money be used for other education purposes? It's a great question. It's a great question.
Why can't it be? I don't know.
Yeah, the Constitution dictates how we can use those lottery funds, but you're right, it is extremely overfunded. And Representative Stacey Evans has, for a number of years, tried to draw down on those funds based on the overfunding, and some legislation has moved, some has not. But yeah, we can use additional funds to take care of all those pre-K slots, as well as provide needs-based scholarships for college. But it just has not moved yet.
Okay. Other questions? We definitely have some thank yous coming out, so thank you. Well, y'all, it is 2 minutes until 8 o'clock, so I'm proud of us not going over our time. Thank you so much for taking out an hour to be with DeKalb County Democrats. I know that Fulton and Cobb have great Democratic Party, but I'm just saying, we kick ass, and we're so happy y'all are here.
You
It's a
do.
pleasure.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for having
Yeah.
us.
I want to
Uh,
thank you for having us. Yeah, it makes a big difference because we can get more done together and talking across the counties as well as across the state. So yes,
yeah,
thank you so much for this.
it's definitely fun to share ideas across the county and across the metro area because we all work so closely together. So thank y'all so much. And thank you everybody who is on. My understanding is, and Lawrence, feel free to correct me. This is going to be recorded. People can come back and watch it. We've been Facebook Living this. So Lawrence, give me a thumbs up if that's correct.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Well, y'all have a wonderful evening and we'll see everyone later. Bye bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.